Olaudah Equiano, author and abolitionist. Born 1745 and raised in what is now modern-day Nigeria, Olaudah Equiano and his sister were kidnapped and sold to slave traders when he was about 11 years old. He was shipped to Barbados before landing in Virginia. There, Equiano again found himself sold to a British Royal Navy officer, Lieutenant Michael Pascal, who renamed him Gustavus Vasa after a Swedish king from the 1600s. Equiano then functioned as Pascal's personal attendant. Subsequently, he worked on various ships, received formal schooling, and converted to Christianity. Sold once more to a prominent merchant named Robert King, he continued to work ships as well as a valet and barber to his new owner. Equiano began trading on the side. After just 3 years, he was able to buy his freedom and started to travel the world. He is perhaps most well known for his writings of the slave life. In London, Equiano became involved in anti-slavery movements. Equiano's autobiography, The Interesting Narrative of the Life of Olaudah Equiano or Gustavus Vasa the African, was published in 1789. It's one of the earliest books published by an African author. He did return to Nigeria in his later life, although there was no trace of his village or family members. He was married to Englishwoman Susanna Cohen, with whom he had 2 daughters, before dying in 1797. Equiano's autobiography, The Interesting Narrative of the Life of Olaudah Equiano or Gustavus Vasa the African, tells the story of his life as a young boy in an African village, his sudden kidnapping, his being made a slave in Africa, a horrendous voyage on the slave ship, bondage in the Americas, conversion to Christianity, purchasing his own freedom, experiences on a British man of war, employment on a plantation and on commercial ships, and ultimately Equiano's contribution to the abolitionist movement. He hoped his book would promote the interests of humanity. It more than succeeded. Equiano, the youngest of 7 children, was trained in agriculture and war. Despite watching for potential kidnappers, he and his sister were taken when no adults were around. But alas, were long it was my fate to be thus attacked and to be carried off when none of the grown people were around. And so began his life as a slave. Initially, he wrote that his experience prompted fear, and in his own words, more persuaded than ever that I was in another world. Equiano thought of escaping from his master and their family, although this does not happen. He was subsequently sold to several different masters before passing hands into Robert King. King treated Equiano well, and he was eventually able to buy his own freedom. The main theme of this piece can be said as destructiveness of the slave trade. Equiano depicts how it affected everybody, from he and his sister being kidnapped and losing contact with their family, resulting in a loss of a relationship. As written at the very end, why are parents to lose their children, brothers their sisters, or husbands their wives? Surely this is a new refinement in cruelty, which, while it has no advantage to atone for it, thus aggravates distress and adds fresh horrors. even to the wretchedness of slavery. Slaves were not told of their past in Africa and had to adjust to a new culture and new society. He describes his new life as such. Every circumstance I met with served only to render my state more painful and heighten my apprehensions and my opinion of the cruelty of the whites. His work exists to highlight how cruel and brutal life as a slave was during that time. The struggle Equiano faces in his life can also be attributed to racism. Slavery prevailed for such a long time, and one of the reasons for this is that it also offered economic success. This work should be included on our syllabus because it will help us understand the experiences of enslaved people. Unlike the other works we've studied in class, this was written firsthand by a Black person. Because of that, it's also unique as it describes memories of life in both Africa and America. I do believe that Equiano's work has helped white people rethink their relationship with slavery and better helps us understand the history of slavery.